guys, it's Rebecca. So today I'm just going to be recommending some books that will go along with our new readathon that will be going on from the 27th of July to the 5th of August. Basically it's called Join the Six and the prompts are to do with like auditioning to be part of the band members from Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, so that's what it's inspired by. I'll be going through half of the prompts today, so this is part 1. Part 2 will be coming up in a couple of days, so look out for that. Basically I'm just going to split it in half. I'm going to talk about like some of the prompts today and finish it off in part 2. So anyway, just to get started, the first section is vocals. So basically if you choose these 3 prompts, if you complete them, then you'll be the newest singer for the band. I'll just give you a recommendation for each of the prompts. So the first one is that Daisy Jones and the Six is written in the style of a memoir. Read a book by an own voice as author. So for this I've actually chosen 2 different books because I'm not entirely sure if one counts. Like I think it does. So I'm just going to give 2 recommendations for this because as well like they're kind of different kinds of books. They're both good books. So the first one is Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. I gave this 5 stars. It's such a good book. It's a book with all black characters and it is written by Tomi Adeyemi, who is a black woman. Basically there's a lot of magic, there's a lot of politics within this world. I'm not going to go into too much detail about what it's about because I know it's so popular, but if you haven't read it yet, if you haven't got a copy or if you've got your own copy but haven't got to it yet, now is the perfect chance to read this because it is absolutely amazing and there's no better time to read it than now, and such a good opportunity to read it as the own voices prompt if you do choose to go for vocals. So the second recommendation I'm going to make for this is one that I actually don't like as much. I gave it 3 stars, but I know a lot of people did like it at the time, and that is Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. Not a lot of people talk about this book anymore, but John Green himself struggles with OCD and anxiety, and I think he also might struggle with depression. In this book one of the main characters does have OCD, so it has mental health rep, and John Green himself struggles with it, so it is own voices. This is just like a contemporary romance, just a really typical John Green novel. It's not my favourite in the world, but I definitely think it will be for some other people, just not for me. But it is beautiful and it's nice to have on your shelf as well, and it's quite short, so I think that it's definitely a good one to choose if you want to go for vocals. So the next prompt for vocals is each band member gives their account of what happened. Read a book that is in first person. So for this one I'm going to choose Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. This is one of my favourite books of all time. It is written in first person and it is beautiful. The first line of this is one of my favourite first lines out of any novel. It's so beautiful. It's last night I dreamt I went to Manderley again, and I just think that that's so like enticing, and it's kind of like a mystery thriller romance novel. I'm not going to go into too much detail about what these are all about. I'm just going to kind of give the gist of it. We follow a woman that we never actually find out the name of. Basically the main character ends up marrying this man, but he had a first wife that she doesn't really know much about, and it's very mysterious and enticing and beautifully written, and yeah, just go and read it. And this should fit into some of the other categories too, if as like a modern classic, if you want to kind of double up, because yeah, it's amazing. It also has gold on the cover, which will go along with a section from the drums if you want to double up. It's also a modern classic, as I said. That's another prompt in another section, so you could definitely double up with this one, and it is amazing. Everybody needs to go and read it. It's 5 stars. So the next prompt is the Six write their own lyrics. Read a book that is written in verse. Okay, this one I don't have an actual physical copy of, but I'm going to be talking about The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. I read this book recently. I think I finished it like yesterday or the day before. It wasn't the book for me, unfortunately. I gave it 3 stars, but that doesn't mean to say that so many other people absolutely love it, and I think like a lot of people will, and I definitely think it's worth picking up. It just wasn't for me for a variety of reasons that I won't get into. I'll talk about that more in my wrap up, but it's definitely the book for a lot of people because most people do give it 5 stars, and I would definitely recommend it picking it up, especially for a readathon, because it's so quick to read because it's written in verse and it's just quite easy to get through, and you can maybe double this one up too, as I try to pick books that you could probably double up with if you don't have time to complete multiple prompts. So the next section is guitar, and the first prompt is the guitar has 6 strings. Read a book with 6 words in the title. I tried to actually find a book that had 6 words in the title that I'd read, and I actually don't think there was, at least not any book that I've read physically. I'm literally now just realising that you could read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I actually have that on ebook, so maybe that's actually an option for something that I could read in this, but Apart from that, I've never read anything, I don't think, with 6 words in the title as far as I could come up with whenever I was thinking about recommendations for this. Apart from The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which I haven't read and don't know much about, the only one that I had physically was A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J Maas. I haven't read any of these, but I know that so many people love it, and I've only learned recently that you don't actually need to have read Throne of Glass to have read this, so I definitely think that this would go well. If you haven't read it, it's not that long, especially for a Sarah J Maas book, it's not that long, and I definitely think that maybe I could get to it. I'm sorry that I don't have any ones that I've read to recommend, but I just thought that 6 words in the title is quite hard to define because it's so exact, but Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and A Court of Thorns and Roses definitely would work for this prompt. So the next prompt is Graham and Eddie are apparently inspired by Lindsay Buckingham and Peter Green read a book that is based on a true story or is a retelling. I had to think about this and I realised I don't read a lot of books that are based on true stories, and I don't read a lot of retellings, but there's one that I definitely love that used to be quite hyped, and that is Geekerella by Ashley Poston. I loved this book. I know it's not the best piece of literature in the world, but I think it's so much fun, and it's so I love the cover. I think it's so beautiful. I always say that I think that the title Geekerella is really cringy, but it's genuinely such a fun book, and it's just so easy to read and really easy to fly through, which is perfect for a readathon. Basically, if it isn't obvious, this book is based on Cinderella. It's a Cinderella retelling. Basically, it has a lot to do with fandom. There's a lot of romance. Basically, it's about this girl who loves this TV show, which is basically like a Star Trek equivalent. She ends up texting this guy who is actually going to play the lead role in the new film. She doesn't know it's him, and yeah, everything goes from there, and it's so good. I really love it, and I definitely recommend this one, as I'm pretty sure I gave it 4 or 5 stars, and I just think it's so fun and so cute. Perfect for a readathon. So the next prompt is Everybody Loves a Guitar Solo, read a standalone. Before I say what book I picked for this, if you can hear a whistle going off in the background, it's because my brother's playing the tin whistle. He's practicing the tin whistle because he's learning it at the flute, so if you hear that in the background, that's why. Anyway, the book that I'm going to recommend for this is The Wicked Deep by Shea Earnshaw. This book is absolutely amazing. I'm nearly sure I gave it 5 stars. I definitely gave it at least 4 stars. I read this 2 years ago, I think, and it is just absolutely amazing. It's about witches, it's kind of creepy, it's mysterious, there's romance. Yeah, it's so good, and it's just an amazing standalone. It's really not that long. I'm going to read out the back or at least some of the back, because I feel like it would just be a better way to explain it. It says, 2 centuries ago in small isolated Sparrow, 3 sisters were sentenced to death for witchery and drowned in the waters surrounding the town. Now, each summer, the sisters return, stealing the bodies of 3 girls and seeking revenge by dragging boys to their watery deaths. So that's just the first bit of the description, but it's honestly amazing, and if you haven't read this, you need to. It's, as I said, really not that long, so definitely pick this one up if you pick the guitar. So the next section of the readathon is bass, and if you pick bass, then the first prompt is the bass can create deep rumbles, read a book with an ocean theme. I'm just realising that you could also actually choose The Wicked Deep for this one, because I guess that would count, so that would actually be good to double up with. I'm realising this as I go through. It's really easy to double up on this readathon. So for this one, I'm going to pick a classic actually, and that is The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. Even though this is a classic, I'm pretty sure a children's classic, it doesn't mean this childish or anything. It's an absolutely amazing novel. I haven't ever read Tom Sawyer, but I don't actually like the character Tom Sawyer, so I've never had any interest in reading it, but Huckleberry Finn is amazing. An amazing book. It's super easy to read, it's super easy to get through, and definitely has the theme of the ocean. Well, more the Mississippi River, but I think it counts water and everything. I didn't want to recommend Moby Dick or the shipping news or anything like that. I didn't want to recommend anything too complicated, but I definitely think that it'd be a great opportunity to read Huckleberry Finn, because it's obviously a classic and it's good to, get classics into your reading, and yeah, I never talk about it as well, so I think that it's the perfect opportunity to recommend this. So the next prompt is that the bass often goes unnoticed behind the limelight of the guitar. Read an underhyped book. So for this one, I've actually picked another classic, and that is The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte. I think behind the limelight of Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre, this often gets lost, and I think that it's such a beautifully written novel. It's also written in multiple perspectives, which is a question out of the crowd section, so you could double up with this one. It's like a feminist novel of its time, and it's a lot more fun and it's very vibrant and exciting, I think, in comparison to like Wuthering Heights, which is quite a gothic, dull, not dull in like a boring way, but like it's quite, Wuthering Heights is quite a dark novel. I think so is Jane Eyre. It's quite dark, it deals with a lot of heavy topics, but The Tenant of Wildfell Hall is a lot more upbeat and I think a really good classic to start off with. It's also written, as I said, in multiple perspectives, so you really get to know the characters really, really well, and yeah, it's absolutely amazing. Definitely try it out. Yeah, it's just so good. If you want to try one of the Brontes books and you don't really know where to start, then I would highly recommend starting here rather than starting with Wuthering Heights or Jane Eyre or any of Charlotte Bronte's other novels. I definitely think this is the perfect place to start and the perfect opportunity to read this, especially if you're quite like an avid YA reader. I think it's always good to have something broken up, or if you're wanting to get into classics. So the next prompt is bass guitars were first made in the 1930s. Read a modern classic. So for this one I've picked a really short book, and that is Franny and Zooey by J.D. Salinger. If you didn't know, J.D. Salinger is actually my favourite author of all time. I think he is absolutely amazing. There's actually mental health rap in here as well. J.D. Salinger did have his own struggles that he dealt with, so this just basically follows a family that also feature in some of the short stories in Readathon with Love and Squalor. Sorry, my phone's going off. I have it on because I have the prompt booklet up, but my phone keeps buzzing, so sorry. Yeah, this basically just follows a family and follows their everyday life and the family dynamics between them. There is trigger warning for suicide in this, so definitely take note of that if that is something that you wouldn't like to read about. Apart from that, it is honestly such a good novel and really explores a lot of themes really well, and it's a beautiful novel too, and it does have gold in the cover, which you can double up with for the drums, and it's only 100-ish pages. It's only about 150 pages or less, and it's a really good place to start with J.D. Salinger and these characters, as well as featuring in Readathon with Love and Squalor. They also feature in Raise High the Roof Beams, Carpenters and Seymour, which is also a really short book, and Readathon with Love and Squalor is his short story collection. I don't actually have a copy of that, but Salinger is definitely like a great novelist to get into classics with, because his characters are so vibrant and so enjoyable to read about and so realistic, and I've never read such well done dialogue in my life than Salinger. So if you really like character driven novels, I highly recommend this, and there's a lot of references to other novels such as Hemingway and Farewell to Arms and everything like that, so go and read it. It's the perfect time for a readathon since it's so short. So that's all for this video. As I said, you should keep an eye out and you'll see the rest of my recommendations in the next video. I'm sorry that I didn't go into actually a lot of details about these books. I kind of didn't want it to be too long. I just kind of wanted to give you the vibe of each book. The classics that I recommend, I'm guaranteed that like pretty much anybody will love, and the ones that I recommended are really easy to get into for like a beginner reading classics. And I think actually a readathon is probably a good opportunity to get started into classics, because classics are best read in like a shorter amount of time, so you can really get to know the characters and really get involved. The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, Franny and Zooey, and The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn are all great starting classics, and I highly recommend them along with so many of the other books that I've already mentioned for so many different reasons. So I really hope that you join in the readathon. Please let me know if you'd like to join in. I would love to see your TBRs whenever they're up. I am just so excited for this to take part. I'll link all of the information like the prompt booklet, the Join the Six Twitter account, the Join the Six Instagram account, and all of the co-hosts below, all of their channels, and you can also find my social media below where I'll be talking a lot about the readathon in the upcoming weeks and more information about it. So anyway, if you enjoyed this video, then please like and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. Let me know if you've read any of these books, if you like any of them in the comments, or if you think that you might add any of them to your TBR for Join the Six. That's it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.